Hey Mitch, come to read the Drift ad. Okay, come on over. Today's episode is brought to you in part by Drift Outfitters in downtown Toronto, Ontario. Drift Outfitters is your source for all things fly fishing. From waders and boots to thread and feathers, Drift has it all. Check in on their website for their latest updates and policies regarding shopping during the pandemic. Curbside pickup for your online and phone orders is a great way to get the gear you need, and they're shipping for free across Canada on orders over $100. Visit driftoutfitters.com to learn more. driftoutfitters.com. Hello and welcome to another episode of SoFly. It is, it's actually the middle of October. This episode's coming out mid-November, but we're back recording another episode today. My name is Mitch, and we've got Yilma.
Hey, everyone.
And Aldo couldn't join us today, but we do have a very special guest on the show. We're super excited to be talking to Rick Kustich. Is a fly fishing writer, instructor, and guide. He's the author of Hunting Musky with a Fly and Advanced Fly Fishing for Great Lakes Steelhead, as well as 4 other fly fishing titles. He's also featured in the film Spay Days. Rick's work has also appeared in numerous national and regional publications, including Fly Fisherman magazine. He spent time as a fly shop owner and a fly fishing book publisher. Rick began fly fishing nearly 50 years ago on the lakes and streams of upstate New York. He's since traveled extensively to experience the finest fly fishing throughout North America and beyond, but continues to find that some of the best fishing often exists in your own backyard. Rick spends a significant amount of time each year on the water and has developed a special passion for trout, musky, and steelhead fishing in the Great Lakes and Northwest. Today, he's on SoFly. Rick, thank you so much for coming on. Welcome to the show.
Thanks for having me, guys. Glad to be here.
Yeah. Thanks so much for that. I took that bio directly off your website. It was so perfectly written. I just was like, oh, perfect. This is great. We're super excited to be chatting today and talking about musky and also steelhead, because we are getting into that time. So we're up in Toronto, and so we fish the Great Lakes steelhead quite often. Mm-hmm. Pretty much exclusively in the fall. This is our time to shine. So definitely excited to be getting into that. But you were out today. You said you were musky fishing today?
Yep, musky fishing today. It doesn't feel like October, that's for sure. I mean, and then it's that fish aren't acting like it's October yet either.
It's wild, eh? Like it's like 25 degrees out right now. Like I'm sitting here, like got my window open. Like
I know, shorts and t-shirt.
Man,
It's so I think some cool weather's coming that'll change their attitudes a little bit. But was able to pick up one muskie today, but it was a lot of work and came close on another bigger fish. But it's been a grind this year so far for me, anyways.
I mean, that sounds like a pretty good day. I mean, for most musky anglers, getting a fish and seeing a big follow, like, is that kind of common for when you're on the water?
Once we get into the fall period, I really do kind of expect to at least get one hook up and see a few other fish. But even getting to that point, I would say in the last couple of weeks had at least been hooking a fish pretty much every time out. But it's been before that, they were really just kind of mucked down into a summer attitude and just really haven't been moving much. So it's been,
that's pretty fair. I mean, I think you're probably pretty dialed in as an angler. You've been fishing for quite some time. So I think, you've probably paid your dues when it comes to chasing muskie on the water.
Yeah, that's for sure. And it's not always pretty, and it's not, certainly not always easy, but, it really is just really about the grind. It's about just keep casting, keep your head down, and eventually good things happen. It's and you can go hours, you can go days without a fish, and I guess I think one of the most appropriate ways of looking at it is every cast you make, you're one cast closer to that next fish. So
I
think that's the way you always got to look at it, whether it's going to be on that trip or the next trip out.
Yeah, you got to stay
your counters going. Right?
Yeah, exactly. So, okay, well, why don't we just kind of go right back and start right at the beginning of your fly fishing life? Like, how did you get into fly fishing? And maybe we'll kind of just work through kind of chronologically where you're at today.
Well, it's kind of interesting. I mean, I grew up. I still live in the same area where I grew up, but I grew up on Grand Island, which is an island on the Upper Niagara River. And basically at the end of my road, you could see Ontario right across the West River. Of the Niagara. And, growing up surrounded by water was just natural that I would take to fishing. And pretty much every role model in my life was a fisherman. My dad, my grandfather, my uncle, my brother, my cousin, everybody that kind of lived close to me with fish. So, I mean, it was just inevitable that I was going to be introduced to it, and certainly took a passion to it for sure. And, I was really self-taught with respect to fly fishing. I mean, I think anybody that is learning today and has the benefit of, YouTube videos and all kinds of, books and magazine articles and things of that nature, you kind of lose perspective of even when I, started back in the early 70s. I mean, there was very little, written. And so I was self-taught. I just taught myself how to cast with actually on a spinning rod with a level line of all things.
Whoa, no way.
And really got some casting instruction out of, and I know a lot of fly fishermen that started in my era. The Joe Brooks trout fishing book kind of was my Bible, and I still have a tattered copy of it somewhere on my bookshelf. But certainly, of the very few books that were available at that time, that was very helpful to me.
Yeah, you're kind of like, it was like the frontier really of fly fishing at that time, right? Like when you were getting into it, you guys were also discovering like ways of doing things and the fish and like really getting into it.
Yeah, no doubt. I mean, even you go back into that time, and a lot of it was trout oriented, and getting into these other species a lot of that was just expanding at that time. So it was, it was an interesting time to be involved in the sport. I wish I, knew half of, or a tenth of what I know now back then. With the less pressure on some of the rivers and things like that. I really could have.
That's a good point, eh?
Like, that, but
oh my God, can you imagine? Yeah, like knowing what you know now and having the fishing opportunities that you had back then. Like you'd have some pretty epic days.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Yeah. That's cool.
So, but I caught my first trout, or my first fish on a fly rod was a trout on up in the Adirondacks on a family vacation, and
nice.
Kind of just took off from there. I just really couldn't get enough of it, and just every opportunity I had to fish and to fly fish, I took it.
So apart from having obviously just like where you were, proximity to water, and also people in your life being fly anglers, like was there anything else with fly fishing that just had you like entangled in kind of the sport and the adventure of it all?
Again, it just all kind of came in steps. My brother-in-law was a big trout fisherman. He wasn't a fly fisherman, but he would take me trout fishing to trout streams down in the southern tier as I got it, before I could drive. And he always fished with bait. I just always, I would see fish rising and whatnot, and just always knew there was something more, to the whole approach. And so that kind of really whetted my appetite for learning how to catch those fish on the surface and catch them with a fly. And my brother, was a big influence. I mean, he showed the Steelhead Book, and he co-authored that with me. We both had a lot of influence on each other as fly fishermen. He moved, he's quite 12 years older than I am, and moved out of the house when I was quite young. Eventually moved out west, and he was in Idaho and Montana. And I would visit him frequently, before I could drive and then after I could drive. And, that was a big influence on really expanding my fly fishing.
Yeah, and didn't Jerry like go out and do the whole trout bum thing and like really search for, basically fish like all the places you could fish on the continent?
Yeah, he really did. And, he certainly traveled a lot during his life, but he lived in Twin Bridges, Montana for a number of years. He lives in Maryland now, but lived in Twin Bridges, Montana for 30 years. And just the entire time out there, he just built fly rods and, first for Winston, then for his own company, Sweetgrass. And just lived the trout bum life for a number of years, and did a lot of traveling.
Seeing your brother do that must have gotten you like pretty jazzed too. You're like, I gotta go do some of this myself.
Oh, absolutely. There's no question. Passion. I mean, he was the perfect big brother, still is, and he had a lot of influence on my life, going forward. And
awesome.
but I think we played off of each other too. I think there was a lot of things that I was, doing, on the East Coast or, with my travel too that influenced him as well. So it's been a good partnership that we've had all our lives.
That's awesome. That's such a great thing to have. So your first fish on the fly rod was an Adirondack trout?
Yeah, it was an Adirondack brook trout.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
that's amazing.
Pretty cool.
Yeah. Which river? Do you remember which river it was?
It was actually on a small lake called
nice.
Nix Lake. It's near Old Forge, New York.
Awesome. That's cool. Oh man.
And it was on again on a fly I had tied. It was just it was a damsel, some just crazy damsel fly with blue yarn and some plastic wings on. I wish I still had it. That would have been a great.
But you were tying your own flies at that point too. Like you got into it.
There was really not that much available. Eventually, I learned that there was an Orvis store, in close by here that I eventually started going to. But prior to that, I mean, there was nothing. There was the Herder's catalog and things like that. It just really wasn't much availability.
So fly fishing kind of really was just like you heard about it from a friend or a family member and you're like, I think I'll try that. It wasn't like really an accessible thing.
No. I really had to put some effort into it to pursue it when I was that young. And then, once I got into my early 20s, I mean, things became more accessible. There was more books and more, more magazines and magazine articles. And like I said, there was a fly shop, in an area that I could drive to. So that all really, really helped, when you walk into a fly shop and see a bunch of flies and materials and things like that. But I've just always had such a passion for fly fishing. It's something that's just never wavered either, throughout my life. Away. I mean, there's some ebbs and flows, but it's where I feel comfortable. It's where I feel best when I'm out on the water. Still to this day, I think what drives me is just trying to learn different things, different techniques. Always just trying to push it a little bit. That's kind of what has driven me into spay casting and spay fishing, and then just musky fishing. I mean, you can just keep pushing the limit up and pushing the level up, and that keeps you motivated.
Well, that's it. That's it. Musky fishing, like before we get into steelhead, how'd you get into musky on the fly? Was it just sort of obviously a natural progression of I can catch these things on a fly, let's do it. But what was that, for?
Yeah, I think, I've told this story a couple of times on, to when I've had these discussions, but so on Grand Island, there is and I write about this in the beginning of the book, of the Musky book, but there's a fishing club there that called the Niagara River Station Fishing Club. Yeah. And it's one of the oldest operating fishing clubs in the United States. And my uncle was a member there when I was a kid, and every now and then he'd take me fishing, and you'd have to go through the clubhouse to get to his boat. And I just remember the first time going in there was a musky mount on the wall, and going in there and seeing this, probably wasn't even, probably looking back at it, it looked huge. I mean, it could have been a 42 or 45 incher or something, but it was big and protruding teeth and, its mouth agape and everything. And it just I couldn't believe that fish was in the river where, we would go swimming and where we were going to go fishing and things like that. So, I mean, that captivated me right from the time I was a kid, and I still, every time I go into, if I go into a lodge somewhere and there's a mount, whether it's a skin mount or, more or less now, more of them are going to be,
the replicas.
The replicas. I always think, man, there's always a story. There's got to be a story behind that fish, and to me, that fish on this wall was my story. I mean, it really, I still remember it to this day, just walking in there and just, my jaw dropping. So, it'd be a few years before I would catch my first one, but, eventually we caught a few on spinning gear, and we caught a few, almost by accident, jig fishing for bass and things like that when we were really young too, because we had access to boats when we were pretty young, 12, 14 years old. We'd be able to use a neighbor or my good friend's boat. So we caught some muskies then, but it was probably when I was about early 20s when I really started understanding fly fishing and able to understand the different lines and rods that could be used, where those kind of two things intersected. But it was really, I never fished seriously for muskie with gear. Just really the only serious fishing I've ever done for muskie has been with fly rod.
That's pretty cool. That's cool to be able to say that, I mean, it's also such a special moment that you had in the fly shop when you were a kid. Like, I think you hit on a good point, seeing that fish on the wall and the stories behind it. And, it's true. Like, I think when you see something like that and you're like, I can catch that thing. And like, it's just like, for some reason, for some of us, it's just like, it strikes us, it's just so, it sticks
in my
with
backyard.
Yeah.
That's the thing.
Yeah, exactly.
So wild,
no, exactly. Yeah, literally at the end of your road. Yeah. So, and that was just such an eye opener because up to that point, I mean, I just knew there was perch and there was bass.
Sure. Yeah. And then there's this shark in the river. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly.
It's awesome. Okay. So can you kind of take us through and describe like a perfect day on the water fishing muskie for you? Because I've never muskie fished. Yilma's done it once. I'd love to do it sometime, but I just want to get this kind of idea of, I've heard of 10,000 casts and it's a challenge and a grind and all this. What is the perfect day for you chasing muskie on a fly? At
least where I fish for them most often, it seems like the nasty, ugly days are muskie days to me.
Yeah.
They're generally not the bluebird days. I mean, you can catch them on those days, but just to me, that's the first thing I associate with, kind of musky and musky conditions and musky weather is water that's a little off color and wind. And even though I don't like the wind all the time when you're fly casting, and just nasty. And those are the kind of days that really just kind of, and they don't have to necessarily be windy, but just overcast, maybe a little rain,
crappy weather.
But not too terrible that that becomes a masochistic endeavor. But I just do like that. I just like that element of kind of the weather that's going to keep a lot of other people away too.
Totally, yeah. Well, there's something kind of adventurous about it, and kind of just, I don't know, just like edgy and hard, It is fun to be out there when it's kind of raining a little bit.
It is. I always enjoy trying to feel like you've met the conditions head on, like you've met Mother Nature head on, and you conquered, or at least you survived anyways.
Totally.
Totally. So, but I always find those to be the situation, the weather, the kind of days I like. Certainly getting a little more technical. I like new moon situations. I just feel like I've had better luck when there's a new moon or better activity with fish. I pay attention to the moon rises and sets during the course of the day too. There does seem to be increased activity around those.
Yeah, so that's interesting.
I was just going to say, Mitch, Adam Valley, the guide up at Algoma, says the same thing.
Yeah,
he pays attention to that and makes sure that he's not fishing the day after like a full moon.
Yeah, it's like musky fishing has got this whole other layer of paying attention to surroundings.
Yeah, it does. I mean, I look at stuff like that too in terms of trying to plan my days or planning any trips or whatnot. But yeah, those 3 or 4 days after a full moon can be really good, especially for bigger fish. And that's kind of proven out over the years. I mean, there's no guarantees with any of that stuff, but there's tendencies there that you try to take advantage of.
Yeah,
for sure.
Yeah.
So interesting.
So you're out on the water, the fishing's a little bit slow for muskie in your typical spots. Is there something you do to remedy that situation, or is it sort of just like perseverance, keep going?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, a lot of it is just keep casting, but some of it is, there's a certain element that you do want to have some confidence that, where you're fishing and, the areas that you're in are, areas that are going to produce or potentially going to produce. So, I mean, I think there is a certain amount of hitting different spots, hitting a variety of spots, and really just trying to get some flow during the course of the day. If you start seeing fish in one spot versus another, then coming back to that, hitting that area again, letting it rest, hitting it again, though, I think is, the way I kind of approach it, really just, it should never, in as much as you don't always get a lot of feedback in the course of a day. And, if you're lucky and you're really, finding an active situation, I mean, you may see, multiple fish in a day. I mean, there's days when you might see 5, 6, 7 fish in a day. Yeah. But most of the time it's not that. It's, a couple encounters and things like that. Mm-hmm. But it should never, even if you're not getting that positive feedback, it should never be a haphazard situation. You shouldn't just be needle in the haystack. You should always, my feeling is always have a purpose for where you are. And there should be a reason why you're there. And whether it's, because of the structure or bait or, both, seeing fish, knowing that fish are usually there on a year in, year out basis at a certain given time. Those things should all count towards where you're going to fish, but you shouldn't just be, just haphazardly covering the water.
Right. Yeah. Just casting anywhere.
Yeah.
Rick, if you could maybe help me figure this one out. I've been asking a lot of people this. Why, when a muskie hits your fly, it just hits it and leaves it and doesn't bite it? So many times, so many missed opportunities.
You've missed the fish, yeah.
Missed the fish. It just hit. You can feel it. It's like, I mean, this hook is huge, and it goes right for it, and then it just does not connect. And it happened maybe on that day that I was fishing, and let me tell you, it was not a hyperbole. It was 10,000 casts. I think out of all those casts, 5 times I got a swipe, and I got a nice pull, a nice tug, and nothing on my line. It's like they were just saying hello, goodbye.
There's no one way that a muskie ever takes a fly. I mean, there's you see pretty much everything from the perfect situation where a fish takes it and turns on it, and you get a good corner of the mouth hook set, to fish that'll grab it and kind of keep coming at you and create so much slack it's hard to get it tight before they drop it. And I see a lot of those where that they'll come up and take kind of a turn or a swipe at it, connect with a piece of it. I'm not sure if they're just trying to, just get a piece of the fly, right. Or what they would think is bait at the time. Mm-hmm. I can tell you that, there's just, no one reaction fits all, but the one thing that we always try to do is just really strip set hard. Anytime you right. get a fish to grab, just strip, and you're either going to pull it out of its mouth or you're going to, get it to bury in there somehow. And, normally when I got a couple of partners that I fish with, Nick Pionessa being one of them, and we'll just coach each other. If we know one of us has hit a fish, just strip, and just don't stop until you're using 30 to 50 pound test, leader. You're basically not going to break it, so you just keep stripping until one of those things happens. So that's really the about all you can do is strip set on them, and hopefully it's going to bury in there somewhere. The other thing too that I've really learned about is not all hooks are the same. And right. I like to use a hook that has a long, straight, fine point, something that really gets good penetration. I've found some of them that have just a little bit of curve at the end, just don't seem to penetrate as deeply. So I found a couple of hooks that I really like that get that. So I mean, those are the types of things that. But in terms of, if a fish comes and swipes at it and just doesn't grab it all the way or take it, it's just kind of,
it sounds kind of like you almost trout setting the hook didn't do his justice.
No, I wasn't
probably not
trout
good,
setting. I was strip setting. I felt like those beats were just playing with me the whole time.
There are sometimes though. I'm not saying it because it's really not always that simple.
Right.
You know, sometimes they just, you know, they get it in their mouth and they just don't take it all the way. I actually had one on a figure eight a couple weeks ago. Did the same thing. I mean, I had it on GoPro and I've gone back and watched it and I go, how did that thing not? And I actually see the fish go up, grab the back of the fly, and I mean, it looks like it has a good back end of the fly, and it had a hook in the back there, and he didn't get hooked. So I don't know. I don't know how they can do it. So it does happen, I know. And there's other times where I think they just take a swipe at it to, you know, maybe take a piece out of it.
Yeah, kind of an aggression thing. Yeah.
That was a great day, I must tell you, Rick.
Yeah, it sounds like it.
Oh yeah.
It sounds like it. It sounds like you need to get back there.
Yeah, I was definitely. Mitch, you coming?
Yeah. Oh man, I'm down. I'm down. I've never, like I said, I haven't musky fished, but I actually there's a couple things I'm wondering when it comes to it. The other thing was we've covered a bunch, but the other thing was how much do fly patterns matter? Like, does the pattern matter? Is it more of a color thing?
Well, I'll tell you, I think yes and no. I think there are times where if you get just a reasonable fly pattern in front of a fish that's ready to eat, you know, I think it would eat a wide range of patterns. And then I do think there are times where, you know, specific flies, especially when the water's clear, but when the fish are a little more wary, where I do really think that it does make a difference. You know, and even I've been fishing with some pretty clear conditions the last few weeks, and you know, I went to smaller flies. I've been using more like Blaine's Game Changer style flies.
Oh yeah, nice.
And you get a little bit more of that side to side action with them. They just look a little more injured, and they're just more subtle. And it, you know, it seems like it's made a difference in this clear water the last couple of weeks. So there's no question that you know. And then there's another good friend of mine, Joe Goodspeed, that I fish with a bit. He makes these flies that have goop on the head, and and it just forces, when you strip it, even just a light strip, it just kind of forces them to go side to side and up and down. It just looks like an injured bait. And again, you know, in certain situations where the fish aren't being real aggressive, you know, those style of flies have seemed to produce better than, and those are pretty small too, but they do seem to produce better than just your typical big, you know, bucktail, saddle hackle type flies, which, you know, I've done very well on over the years, but it does seem to be important to have some variety.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
Well, you know, I'm sure a lot of people listen and heard me ask, does the fly matter? And they're shaking their head. Of course it matters, but I think it just matters in a different way, like you're saying, action and you know, how it manipulates water and all this sort of stuff. Because they're so crazy. Musky flies are so wild looking. Yeah. I've seen some crazy looking musky flies.
Yeah. All that being said, I'm not a big fly changer, so you know, I do like to try to get a few. That's probably true with most of my fishing, but try to get just a repertoire of flies that I'm comfortable with, and
stick to them.
Yeah, same here. But I think for me, it's just laziness.
just switch it up. Changing the fly. Nice.
Well, you know, there's something to that, though. I mean, that's not even the laziness factor of, you know, when I'm, you know, that's just really, I think in terms of it. I mean, it's crazy, but, you know, might take, and I usually use for muskies now, I just use a snap anyway, so it doesn't take long to change a fly. But you think in terms of that 2 minutes of digging through your box, that's one less cast you could have made with the other fly, and you know, you just never know what, you know, whether that is worth it or not. But I think you can get to a point where you know that your fly just isn't getting it done, and that's when it's time to make a change.
Yeah, fair enough. Yeah, you can kind of just tell when, you know, when
things are getting stale and just
big time.
Do you happen to remember what your biggest muskie has ever been over the years? Would that little Rick looking at the wall-mounted muskie be proud?
I was fortunate enough. This is fishing with Blaine back in 2014, but I did get one that was 54 inches with him.
Holy smokes!
So
it's a big fish.
Yeah, it was a good one.
Wow.
And it's head and shoulders the largest that I've taken.
Jeez, man.
I'd like to. Yeah, I don't know if I can ever. I mean, that's the thing. There's not much to shoot for there. It's gonna be hard to beat that one, but I'd like to come close again someday.
Well, yeah, that's the thing with fishing, right? You never know, I guess.
Yeah.
Right? Who knows?
Yeah, exactly.
Before we move on to steelhead, have you noticed with the musky fishery improvements or degradations, or because you've been fishing for a while? Like, have you seen the fishery change? Are there less fish? Or
on an overall basis, I would venture, I guess, and this is based on just the research I did when I was writing that book, that there's probably a better chance of catching a muskie today than there probably ever has been historically. I just think that there was a number of fisheries that were really hindered and destroyed in the late 1800s, early 1900s. Overfishing, degradation of spawning grounds, things of that nature. But in the maybe 1950s, 60s, there was a number of programs put in place to try to restore fisheries. Hatcheries were used, but just greater protection for the fish. Along with stocking and stocking to a point where maybe they don't need to be stocked any longer. But just the expansion of the fish too. Originally I think the original range was just 2 provinces and 13 states, and now I think there's 26 states that have muskie populations, and they've really expanded. And a lot of those situations they're not all supported through hatcheries. I mean, they may have been established through hatcheries, but some of them have developed good wild fisheries as well. So, there's certainly a lot more water that has muskies in than has historically. And then I just think with the advent of catch and release and greater regulations, that there's bigger, big fish everywhere too. So, yeah, I really think that, this is kind of the golden age of muskie fishing, to be honest with you.
Oh man,
oh, wow.
That's so good to hear.
Yeah.
Like we're so used to hearing sad stories and problems facing fisheries.
Yeah.
It's great to know the muskie are on the up potentially.
Yeah. But the thing about them is as big and vicious looking as they are. I mean, they're the fisheries. Every one of their fisheries are sensitive, and certainly can only take so much either fishing pressure or outside environmental influence. So
yeah. Something to protect, keep fighting to protect them and keep growing the populations.
Yeah,
for sure.
absolutely.
Okay, so switching over to steelhead. What are your first memories of chasing steelhead? Like, you must have been pretty young living on Niagara.
Yeah. I can remember catching my first, steelhead in the lower Niagara, and it wasn't on fly gear. I will say that, my first steelhead were caught on egg sacs and, somewhere in the, early to middle 70s. But, I didn't do much of that either, though. I really converted over to fly fishing, probably by the late 70s, early 80s, with respect to even down in the lower Niagara. And, we would fish it down there with lead core line, actually, a product, I still have some of it. It was a Cortland product called LC13. It was 13 grains per foot. It was just a plastic-coated lead core. We'd make tips out of that. And we'd just fish egg patterns off of those tips. But, that's how I caught my first on a fly down there. And then, started catching some on egg patterns, on some of the other Lake Ontario tributaries in New York.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So then it was all single hand, like you say, fishing these heavy lines with egg patterns.
Absolutely, just chucking them out there.
Yeah, that's cool.
All single hand. Probably, I'm trying to even think. Then I don't even think there was 10 footers at that point. It was probably just all 9-foot rods, 8.5, 9-foot rods. Yeah.
Right. Okay, so before we go into kind of because I want to talk about that some more and how things progressed from a fly fishing standpoint, but just for everybody listening that might not know, what are Great Lakes steelhead? Like, can you just kind of set up what they are?
Well, they originated. Great Lakes steelhead originated from McLeod River fish on the West Coast. Right. The first eggs came into a hatchery in New York State, Caledonia Hatchery. It's about an hour from where I live. and Seth Green was like the godfather of fish culture. Was the kind of the impetus behind that. And there was at a time when the railroads were being used to transport fish from various ends of the continent, and and that was really it was a effort by the U.S. Fish and Game to spread species out throughout different places that didn't have that species. So as part of that, these eggs came to New York State, and so they really were steelhead genetics that were first stocked, and they were stocked eventually. All those fish made it to all 5 Great Lakes, where they began to naturally reproduce by the end of the 1800s in all 5 of the lakes. So and populations especially in Michigan and Ontario, were established from that time on. There's been natural reproduction since then. And then in early 70s, especially when Lake Ontario and Lake Erie, even in Lake Michigan, were going through some really difficult times with the balance of the bait fish and things like that, being way out of whack. And there were stockings of Chinook salmon and coho salmon. There was also an additional, reintroduction of steelhead stock again during that period. And in New York State, they were using a steelhead genetics, a Chambers Creek fish. Yeah. And then that genetics is still in the New York system, anyways. So there's always a debate on, are these really steelhead? To me,
Good question.
To me, I always think of it in terms of this, that these fish originated from the West Coast. They originated from steelhead stock. I have never gotten a definitive definition from a biologist that says a steelhead is an anadromous fish. Most biologists will tell you that it's a migratory fish, a fish that has an urge to leave its natal waters in search of, a food source. So from those two perspectives, or for those two reasons, I think they've earned the name steelhead, and it's deserved in the Great Lakes.
Yeah, and I love this idea of their Great Lakes steelhead.
Like
they're different.
Yeah,
and it's like that's what's special about them.
Right.
That you could catch these things in tribs of the Great Lakes. Like it's a whole other kind of steelheading.
Exactly. Yeah. No, that I think they've developed. I think it really. I think deserves expanding whatever definition that steelhead might have been in the 1970s, whatever that meant, or in the late 1800s, 1900s, and I think it needs to encompass Great Lakes fish, just because I don't see any real difference in how they behave or how they act outside of the fact they're just not going to salt water.
And that's so cool that these things came and it just worked, It's just wild that they were going from the ocean to these, rivers, and we put them in the Great Lakes and they just took off. It's like, oh, okay. Well, that's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yeah.
Salmon too. That's always been so amazing to me.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I agree with that. But so I don't know, that debate can rage on, and it doesn't matter to me. It really doesn't matter to me, because they act the same, and they look the same, and they fight the same, and they take the same flies, and so.
Yeah, it's so fun. It's just a bit of fun little rivalry, right?
Yeah.
Between us and the West Coast people. Yeah. It's all good.
But
okay, so you started fishing for steelhead with the single rods and lead lines and all that stuff. And when did spay kind of hit? When did you start spay fishing? When did it hit?
So, my first experience with that would have been about 1995, I guess.
Okay.
1990. It's 90. I was trying to really, because I've been writing something relative to this. I was really trying to. I might have been 93 to 90, somewhere in the 93 to 95 range. And I had this big old St. Croix rod. It was like a 15-foot, for a 10 weight or something like that. But again, there wasn't not a lot out on the market right at that time. And that's what I had. And, and I had a big old double taper line. And, right away, I mean, it was kind of cool. And I saw the potential in two-handed rods, but it just, right away, I could tell this just isn't right for what I'm trying to accomplish here. So not too long after that, though, I started working with Jerry Seam at Sage Rods. And, I just really, it's interesting because back then, just like we were talking about with Steelhead now, and, maybe not getting full appreciation back then, a lot of manufacturers didn't take the Great Lakes very seriously. They weren't taking the fishery very seriously. Just kind of thought it was chucking, ducking, and snagging salmon and all that kind of stuff.
Right.
And, it was really took some time to get some of the manufacturers to understand that there was, some quality opportunities here. So, Jerry really got on board and started working with him, and we developed some smaller, shorter rods. And I still have, one of those here today. I mean, it was really one of the first switch rods. It was, I think, what is it? It's 10. It's 11 foot 3 inch, and it was made for an 8 weight, but it casts like nice about a 480 Scandi now, and just it's a real soft rod and everything. But it was really one of the first shorter rods, and it really matched up very well. And I probably was using that by the late 90s. And that was that was a huge step forward, for me and what I was trying to do in terms of fishing the Great Lakes rivers. But at that time too, there still wasn't any lines. So what I did is I lined that up with a pike taper, just like an 11 weight, exaggerated weight forward pike taper. And it was kind of similar to a Skagit line, really, in that it was just a short head and turned everything over. And, I'm sure my casting was not very good back in those days, but I got it done. And, so that was by the late 90s. That was my rig right there. It was this short Sage rod and a pike taper, a red pike taper Cortland line. I still have it around here.
That's cool. It's so like, it's so, gritty and, just getting the job done, Yeah, it's cool.
So then, then I guess by the early, 2000s, the Skagit type heads started. First it was wind cutters, and then, then Skagits followed after that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's cool. And in the community, like other people fly fishing and stuff like that, was Spey kind of picking up for everybody as well, and like, kind of following your lead?
Not then. Not in the late 90s, early 2000s. So, just a couple of my friends were starting to pick it up, but it was, still wasn't very popular. Still wasn't real, a lot of equipment, then.
Yeah.
Probably until...
That's kind of cool, though. Like, you and your buddies had this, like, kind of little best-kept secret going on, because you were probably finding that the Spey fishing was helping the fish and, like, actually catching more fish, right?
Yeah. And, I'd say by the early 2000s, you started seeing, a few more people. And there was TNT was coming out. I'm just trying to even remember TNT came out with some shorter rods, and everybody started getting on to at least the 12 and a half, 13 footers. Yeah. And
I'm calling you the pioneer, Rick. Or at least part of the movement, anyways.
yeah, part of the movement. Oh, yeah. It was an interesting time for sure, and then obviously more and more people taken to it since then. Really, I think the bigger thing is back then is everybody was still dead drifting. The fly fishermen that you would see were pretty much dead drifting egg patterns and nymph patterns and things of that nature. Yeah. So whether you were doing it with, I think the real revolution there that I think occurred, and then has really occurred over the last 20 years, has been just towards swinging flies, and whether it's with a single hander or a two hander, I think that's been the biggest change that I've seen, is just how many, and really now how many people are just swinging flies is really big change.
I know it's crazy. Like, even just for us, like it's a huge part of our year. I mean, for me, it's like fall comes, everything else kind of goes away, which I know there's great, like you're saying, muskie. I need to do that. And I know smallmouth fishing's great and all this stuff, but I get so excited to just go swing.
Yeah.
Even if I'm not catching a steelhead, it's just such an enjoyable way to fish, Would you say you actually prefer swinging to other types of fishing, or is it kind of everything on an even playing field?
Yeah, I really enjoy so many. I love the variety, but there is something so calming about swinging a fly,
Yeah, it's nice.
And I think I always think in terms of it is, if you do it first, it's just enjoyable to cast and step and really attend to your fly and try to make sure that it's. I always try to envision what my fly's doing and how it's looking down there and how it's showing itself and whatnot. And it's so captivating. I just think that if you do that and you kind of the catching the fish is just a, byproduct of that, you just really do it well and, kind of look at it as almost as a craft. And, everything else kind of just falls into place.
Well, I think you hit the nail on the head with thinking about your fly, because I can't even tell you how many times, and Yoma will know, that we've been swinging steelhead, and we're not thinking about our fly. We're like looking at birds, like the trees, and like tangling up and whatever else, thinking about sandwiches and stuff. And you might not catch. As soon as you start thinking about what that fly's doing, you start to realize, you start to catch more fish.
Yeah,
like it actually does help. So it's
totally.
I mean, it might sound obvious, but think about what your fly's doing. Yeah, envision it underwater.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great point.
Yeah, no, I just just trying to that's just before Sims used the term, I actually put that in one of my books, but just in terms of, and it was something really that my business partner in the fly shop used to kind of talk about, but just just fish it well, just fish your fly well, and good things will happen. And that really applies to me. It really applies to spay fishing.
Yeah.
So wait, we got some beef here right now, eh? Like Sims is stealing this fish well from you guys.
Yeah.
These fly companies,
I know.
Man, they don't.
They paid some high price Madison Ave. Executive
Somebody
come up with that.
in
They could have just took it out of my book.
Yeah, exactly. That guy probably did.
Yeah, he probably did.
Yeah. I love it.
Yeah, Mitch, I'm a big proponent of imagining and visualizing exactly what that fly is doing. Always. And it really does help. It really, really does. Just wanted to add that.
Well, especially your streamer fishing, that you were doing streamer fishing so much for trout this year on our local rivers. And, I imagine that is exactly the same thing, right?
Exactly the same thing. Usually I visualize a lot when I'm pike fishing. That's when I really like.
Oh, yeah?
Yeah, get all...
It's good.
Ethereal, right? So.
No, it's true. I mean, I think that's when I'm trying to teach anybody swinging a fly, I think that's really the biggest lesson I can try to teach them is think about what, because you see so many people that just throw it out there and think, well, my job's done. You know what I mean? Just kind of hang on and wait for that fish to grab it. But I mean, you really just need to know what's going on down there, in terms of, whether you need to mend, upstream, downstream, not mend at all, whether you're making good casts in terms of, getting too much speed, not enough speed. I mean, it just always need to be thinking about those things. And it really, over the course of a day, pays off.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, I'm going to put you on the spot for a second here. Steelhead fishing stories. We're getting into the fall. It's kind of it feels like kind of a reminiscing, kind of reflecting time, steelhead fishing. Do you have any good steelhead stories that come to mind from over the years? Anything that stands out as like this one day on the river or this one fish or anything like that?
Oh boy, that is putting me on the spot.
I know there's so many stories, but I've been thinking so much about it because, like I said, we're getting into steelhead, and I've just been thinking back to the last few years and thinking about those spots and getting back out there. And
one that I always think about, and it really it's kind of coming up to this time of year. So I've spent a lot of time out in BC as well, and and unfortunately, the fishery out there is really taking a turn in a negative way, and can only hope that it's, not going to be systemic, but hope for the best. But, I've spent a lot of time out there, and I've really enjoyed, it's one of the places I've enjoyed fishing the most. So one story that sticks out in my mind, it's, it's just really, I don't want it to sound self-serving, but there was, I was fishing out of a lodge, and there's a pool that has really a high bank. You can't step off the bank very far, or you're gonna just kind of,
right.
It gets too deep. I mean, and it's terrible wading. There's boulders all the way along it, and it's a tough spot to fish. But it reminds me so much of fishing in the Niagara, because it's the same thing. You don't have much, even spay casting down the Niagara, you'll go and set up your D-loop, and it'll hook on a rock or on a branch or something like that. So I've really developed, kind of a technique, and it's not anything earth shattering, but, kind of use a little perry poke to push my anchor point further out, so that my D-loop doesn't really come, very far behind me or behind me at all, and it just works. And I do it all the time. So, I mean, it's, kind of second nature. Well, nobody wanted to fish this spot because, it was just such pain, and, their D-loops are getting caught in the bank and everything. So I said, all right, I'll fish it. So it ends up turning out that, just kind of using my little Niagara River technique down there, I end up having this tremendous day where I, during the course of the day, I hooked like 6 fish, and, the guide would come and check on me, and he'd say, you want to move? And I'd say, no, I'm okay over here, and he was thrilled because, he didn't have to worry about moving me around, and I was taking up a spot that nobody else ever fished. So it was, one of those things that using a little local Great Lakes knowledge really helped out.
Yeah, for sure. That's awesome. And for people at home listening that might not know what a perry poke is, just because I know you touched on it, what is that in terms of the spay cast, like perry poking your anchor point?
So it's almost like a false forward cast, where you would kind of set up your D-loop and ready to kind of, to make your cast, but instead you kind of just do almost like a soft forward stroke, almost like a false cast going forward. And what it does is just lays, some of the line out on the water, where then you can, reestablish your D-loop. It's most useful for if you kind of bungle your setup, when you're setting up your cast, and maybe your anchor point is, too far up or too far down, or, especially if it's in a situation where if you do set up your D-loop and make your cast, it might collide with your body, which we all want to avoid. So, I mean, it's a good movement for kind of reestablishing your D-loop. But what I try to do, when I have a wall right to my back, is I don't get a full D-loop. So I'll do all my setup, but instead of going into a full D-loop, I just kind of take the rod back a little bit, so the line's kind of just draping right off the rod and not going behind me. And then I use just kind of push that forward with it, so it's kind of a semi perry poke, where I just kind of push it forward so that I can push my anchor point out maybe 20 feet in front of me. And and then I can establish my D-loop from there, and it doesn't go behind my body. So
that's great. That's great to know. Yeah, I mean, it's awesome about spay casting, is just the versatility of it.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, for sure.
Okay, so you owned a fly shop for a while. You were a fly shop owner?
Yeah. So it was the Oak Orchard Fly Shop. So we started. Let's see. An individual named Jerry Senecal started this small shop in his house. It was an old farmhouse, kind of a neat old farmhouse up in near Albion, New York, right on the Oak Orchard Creek. Awesome. And we bought that from him in like 1995, and we ran that shop up there. We moved it into a beautiful old building. It was this old post office up there, and we moved the shop in there and had some lodging. We had another shop down in the southern tier, down on one of the trout streams in Arcade, New York. And then we kind of pulled that all together and moved it into a suburb of Buffalo in Williamsville. And I owned the shop for another, with a partner for another 7 or 8 years after that, and then sold it. The shop was in existence for another, I don't know, maybe 10 years after that, but it did recently shut down, unfortunately.
Okay, right on.
So,
yeah.
But
it had a good solid run, and it was a good experience.
Yeah,
overall.
It was a good solid run. I think there was just some circumstances that occurred in my life personally that kind of took me in a different direction. Or it's something that I still, there's often times where I think, God, I wish I still had the shop or would have kept the shop, but just so happened to work out that way. But it was a good experience. Learned a lot.
That's cool.
Yeah.
That's awesome. And I mean, amidst all of this too, you're a well-established fly fishing writer.
Yeah.
How did you get into that? Like, how did your writing career begin?
It's a good question. I guess, I always was interested in that. I remember reading like Outdoor Life, Ted Trueblood. I don't know if that, if that name's too, old, too old for you guys, but, I just remember like reading about some of their experiences in like Outdoor Life and Field and Stream and things of that nature. And I don't know, it just kind of spoke to me. I always thought it'd be cool to write about your, do your thing and write about your experiences. So I always had that in the back of my mind. And, when I got to a point where I thought I had enough to write about, I started pursuing it. So, and, in the first book I did was, it's old, and it just, I'm almost, look at it now, I'm almost ashamed of it. I wrote it when I was in my late 20s or something like that, although it was still a really good selling book, and I think brought a lot of knowledge there was just nothing on the Great Lakes fishery, nothing on technique, nothing on, with respect to fly fishing. So it really filled a niche and filled a void, and, but my writing and, hopefully has come a long way since then, but,
so this is
there was one.
Book?
There was a one before that I published, self-published it in, like 1990 or something like that. It'd be hard to find one now, I think, anywhere. But we sold it.
Man,
we sold a ton of them. But yeah, it's not, like I said, I'm not proud of it now. Probably was proud of it back then. But
that's a huge accomplishment, and I think it, like you said, kicked off kind of your fly fishing writing career.
It did, and from there was able to start selling a lot of magazine articles after that point as well. So it really did help.
On. But, that's awesome.
Yeah, but no, I was quite proud of that. The Steelhead book that I wrote with my brother. We put a lot of research and a lot of work into that over the years. I think that one was. I talked about like the expansion of swinging, fly in the Great Lakes, and I really think that, and we both feel that had a lot to do with that. I think certainly oriented a lot of people towards the fact that there was more ways to catch steelhead outside of just dead drift and an egg banner.
Mm-hmm. So. Yeah, this book, so by the way, I'm holding up, is Fly Fishing for Great Lakes Steelhead, an advanced look at an emerging fishery. It's a great book. It's awesome, and it's actually, like you say, it covers so many different watersheds. How long did it take you guys to write this book?
Yeah, it was probably a good 3-year project, something like that. And we really did cover a lot of places. It was a lot of travel, and it was an enjoyable time with my brother. We spent a lot of time, both fishing together and traveling together, and have a lot of, a lot of good adventures from that. Yeah.
Oh, that's an awesome experience. Yeah, and it's all documented in a book now. You kind of have this thing. You can look back and remember those times. That's an awesome project to do.
Exactly.
I love that. Yeah, there's actually a chapter in here on the Grand River, which is kind of our home waters. And there's Yilma, I'll have to get you this book. There's a picture of Larry Halleck fishing topwater flies for steelhead on the Grand, and it's cool to see that, because we've had Larry on the show, and we've talked to him a bunch about steelhead and the work he's done on the Grand to kind of help bring it back, and it's just cool to look back and see him in there fishing and
absolutely
see where the Grands come.
Yeah, absolutely. Larry's been a great friend for a very long time. Really back. Probably well before that project even started. And he's awesome. A great guy.
Yeah, he is.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Larry's awesome. In terms of just, maybe to close out the steelhead conversation, problems facing them. I know we touched on like the West Coast, but when it comes to Great Lakes steelhead, I mean, I don't know. Maybe as a stupid question, have you seen the steelhead fishery degrade? Like, I mean, back in the day, it was, from what I've read, quite an amazing fishery.
Yeah, I guess you need to measure what is quality, in terms of for each individual person.
Right.
If I look at like the New York fishery and Lake Erie and kind of the heyday in the late 90s and through the 2000s, there was just tons of fish. A lot of it was very hatchery driven, and so whether that's a measure of quality or not, that you have tons of fish,
right.
To me, it's not necessarily the case. I mean, I like the thought that there's a decent number of fish for the river that you're fishing. It seems to kind of balance out the number of people that are fishing, and balances out the quality of your experience and what you can expect. So from that standpoint, at least I would say on some of the Lake Erie and New York streams, the last 4 or 5 years, the returns have been pretty solid, I think, and because I do like seeing where it's possible, I do like seeing a balance of wild fish. We don't have the water quality in New York that you certainly have in Ontario. I mean, there's nowhere, it's not even anywhere near, but we do have a few couple rivers that do have the ability to produce wild steelhead, and I do like the idea that those rivers won't be flooded with hatchery fish to a point where the wild fish matter. And right now I do see that, at least on my home rivers, that's kind of the case. Where we're getting decent returns of wild fish, and there's hatchery fish blended in, so it's a nice mix. I think, though, that being said, and Larry and I had some conversations recently. I mean, there are problems in the Great Lakes steelhead fishery. There's no question about it. And there are problems that could get worse with global warming. And like Larry has even said on even on some of the Ontario rivers that they're getting that they're getting close in the summertime to a point where they might not be inhabitable, by par and smolts during the course of the year. So I mean, that's certainly one thing that could be troublesome going forward. And I know there's other, in Michigan, they're having some issues with steelhead numbers, and that could be both fishing pressure, and it could also be warming as well. So so I think overall that there's some really healthy populations, but there's some troubling trends as well.
Yeah, things to work on. I mean, fair. I mean, it's good to see. There's obviously good things that are happening, but there's always stuff that we have to work on. And I mean, climate change is a huge one. Yeah. Well, I mean, with that said, that's pretty much the show. We've got 5 more questions, though, Rick, that we ask every guest on the show.
Fair enough.
So these 5 questions. Yeah, we do it to every single guest, and they're kind of just more, it's kind of general, kind of all-encompassing sort of fly fishing questions.
I'm sure he's heard of them.
So we'll ask you those right now. Mitchie's Fishies 5 is what we call them. It's really stupid.
That's all right. That's all right. Sounds good. I'm ready.
Okay. All right. So the first question is, what is your favorite fish and why? If you had to pick a favorite fish, what would it be?
Oh, that is tough. I would say, I guess I would really have to be partial to steelhead, though. And I would say that's both, West Coast and Great Lakes. I wouldn't say, again, like I say, I kind of lump them together anyway.
Yeah.
So, and I can only, I got to tell you how, troubled I am by the news from the West Coast.
Yeah.
And, it's really, I think there's been times this fall where I, kind of felt like I was mourning a bit. I just hope it doesn't, get to that point where I just hope we're not at a point of no return, because that would make me, very sad. But I would say that's probably the fish that the fish in the pursuit that gives me the most joy.
That's awesome. Just to touch on that for a moment too, the BC thing. Do you think we're doing, like, is enough being done out there to help returns?
I
mean, there's so many issues.
I just
right?
think
like, it's hard
I
to
think
address
that
it
the
all.
issues are big. I mean, again, I just had a discussion. I bring them up again, but I just had a discussion with Larry the other day, and I mean, it just seems like the issues are ocean driven, and they're big, and some of them are maybe within management control, and some of them are probably got to do with warming, and it's just a matter of whether the fish are going to be able to adapt to that or not. So I don't know, is enough being done? Probably not, but it's just a matter of how much can be done, and we're hopefully it's going to get more attention going forward.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you say, climate change. I mean, we're kind of, a lot of these issues are beyond just regional management, right? It's like have serious, huge issues. Well, Steelhead is a great answer. I love Steelhead. I totally get it. It's great. Okay, so number 2 of Mitchie's Fishies 5 is, if you could fish anywhere in the world right now, assuming the fishing there will be amazing, where would you go and why?
I don't think there'd be much question. I would want to go to Kamchatka in Russia and fish for steelhead.
Oh, nice.
I think if all things, if I could just get transported somewhere right now, I would say that would be it. Yeah.
And you've done it before.
No, I haven't. My brother did, though. My brher, Jerry ran a camp there for 6 weeks back in like 1997.
That'd be amazing.
Let's
go, Mitch.
It was hardcore. Yeah.
Oh man, that'd be a heck of a destination. Do you have any plans to try to get over there once the world's
it's on my
more normal?
It's on my bucket list, but so are about 8 or 9 other pretty exotic trips. So we'll see how it pans out.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh no, that'd be crazy, man. Can you imagine swinging for steelhead camp?
Yeah.
That'd be awesome. Okay, number 3, Mitch's Fishies 5 is what's one of your best or favorite fishing memories ever? And we kind of had a fishing memory story earlier, but one of your favorite, just all-encompassing fishing memories.
I think if there was I'll tell you, that's a tough one though. I've had so many good ones with my brother. I'll say though, if I had one day that sticks out in my mind, I have a friend of mine that lived in Montana. I met him here in New York, and he passed away. He had cystic fibrosis, and he lived about as long, about as long as you can live with that disease. He was at about 50, and but we would hook up in Montana, and then we would go to BC, and I'm gonna choke up, but there was a day where he was across the river. We were fishing at a lodge, and he was across the river, and I was on, fishing on the other side, and we were fishing this run, and he was hooking up. He had a really good day. He hooked 3 or 4 fish on that side, and I hooked 3 or 4 fish on my side, and we were just kind of talking across to each other, and just, we were on different sides of the river, and I still see, I just have it so ingrained in my mind. I can see that day so well, and I can just see him over there fishing, and it's just, it kind of gives me joy when I think about it. He was a good dude.
Oh man, that's a great memory.
Yeah.
I love that.
Great memory.
Yeah, I mean, that's, you hit it like on the head. It's huge part of fishing is just like having fun with your buddies,
Yeah,
spending time on the water. That's awesome. Okay, number 4, Mitchie's Fishies 5 is, why do you fly fish? What do you get out of fly fishing? What does it do for you?
I don't know. Some days I ask myself that. There are really, honest to God, there are days where it's just like, it's like, what am I doing with my life sometimes, and why do I do this for so long? And,
Totally.
I just think that, for me, it's captivating. It's, it gives me something to think about, all the time. My wife's just complaining, you think about fishing all the time is what.
Oh yeah.
It's like, yeah, I do. I'm thinking about fishing right now, even while you're telling me this. And but I just think like I said, it gives me. It just keeps me engaged, keeps my mind engaged all the time. And I just love being outside, and I love being outdoors. I like just the challenge of trying to figure it out, just that constant drive to whatever's in front of me, whatever type of fishing I'm doing, just trying to figure it out, try to, make it right.
Yeah.
And just, but I think the thing about it is really when it feels good is when I'm relaxed and, can kind of get away all of the pressure and anxiety of the day. That's when it really means something to me,
Yeah, totally. Do you ever find yourself having to kind of force yourself to do that? Sometimes I'm on the water and I forget I need to relax. I'm just I'm thinking about all the stuff. And then as soon as I'm forget about it. It's
sometimes, nice. Definitely. I mean, sometimes even what I'm doing, will get me a little anxious. Like I'm thinking, oh, should I go to that pool or, where should I go? What should I fish? Should I fish, high, low, you're thinking about it. And then sometimes you just got to step back and just say, pick something, just pick something, believe in it and just do it, So, I mean, I think there are times where, to get to that point where you feel relaxed and enjoying what you're doing, you gotta sometimes, most of the time it comes very natural, but sometimes you gotta force yourself to do it. Or if you don't, you're missing the point.
Exactly. Cause does it really matter? You know what I mean? Does it matter? As long as you're fishing and catching something once in a while, everything's good, right? Yeah. No, I dig it. Okay. Number 5 and the last of Mitchie's Fishies 5. One of our favorite questions is, if you were a fly pattern, what would you be? What fly pattern represents you as a person best? And
oh boy, that's an interesting one.
Yeah.
Mitch, he loves it.
I love this one. Yeah. It's just cool to see. We've had so many, answers to this one.
I would have to say, I'm not a terribly flashy guy. So I would be something basic and pragmatic, like a woolly bugger, I think, just
nice,
something that you can, you adapt to a lot of different fish and species, and yet it's got some movement in the water and, kind of looks lifelike. Yeah, that's what I would go with.
Is there a specific color? Any specific color of this woolly bugger? There's a lot of woolly buggers.
Brown catches everything as far as I'm concerned, man. A brown, if my life depended on it, if I was, shipwrecked somewhere and I had to catch a meal, if I had a brown woolly bugger, I'd feel pretty good about it.
No doubt. Yeah, I love that. No, it's great. Woolly buggers, it's true. And a brown woolly bugger too. We've never heard of brown woolly buggers, so surprisingly, we've heard a lot of other woolly buggers.
Yeah. Olive, black,
such a good pattern, man.
Oh, it's the best.
Such a good pattern.
I'll tell you, it's one of my. I'll say it's a dirty little secret for my steelhead fishing is, if I can't get them on a bigger pattern, bigger tube fly or something like that, put a little brown woolly bugger on, and usually closes the deal. So
boom, you heard it here first. See, I've never done. I'm gonna do that now. Yeah. I never thought about
great
that.
Comeback fly.
Yeah. I love it. Rick, thank you so much for coming on the show, and it's been really fun chatting.
Yeah, it's been great. Can I plug a couple of things here?
Would love to. Yeah, was going to ask if you have any upcoming articles or books. Or
just a few things. I mean, you can follow me on. Listeners can follow me on Instagram and Facebook. Just on just at Rick Kustich. Try to do a couple posts a week. Keep things current. I'm working on another book that'll be out. It's actually a spay book that'll be out probably sometime at the end of 2022. And
nice.
The Musky book and the Steelhead book are out there now, and they're both very, very applicable to our local fisheries. So.
Oh yes, they're awesome books, and we'll put the links to all those in the show notes too, and your social pages as well.
Excellent.
Yeah.
And anything else? Is that everything? I mean, that's a lot of stuff you got going on right now.
The one thing too is, if you haven't seen it, is Swing the Fly magazine. It's a website now, and there's an annual book, and that's going to be coming out. The annual book will be coming out, and there is a a piece I did in there on Great Lakes steelhead and kind of the state of Great Lakes steelhead. I picked like 5 or 6 different areas and talked about. So I interviewed Brian Morrison and Larry Halleck and a few other biologists as well. So kind of an interesting thing. So.
Oh, awesome. Man, how do you find the time to fish and all this? I mean, geez Louise.
Just got to do it.
I love it. Are you going to be getting up for steelhead soon, or is it musky for a while?
Tomorrow morning, actually.
Tomorrow morning?
Right. Yeah, so I'm actually starting a guide. I have some guide trips next week, so I have to go out and
wicked.
Really make sure I got all my P's and Q's together. So I'll be out probably tomorrow and probably out on Friday as well.
Perfect. Amazing.
So. It's going to be great.
Well, we'll put, like I said, we'll put all that stuff in the show notes so people can find it. Just head to our Podbean there and you'll find it.
Yep.
We'll post it on Instagram too. But Rick, thanks so
all
much
right.
for on the
Thanks,
show.
Mitch. Thanks, yo.
Absolute pleasure. Absolutely.
Yeah,
man.
appreciate it.
Today's episode is brought to you in part by Gills Fly Fishing International. Gills Fly Fishing International provides the destination fly fishermen with the best personalized trip planning and booking experiences possible. And they run FFI Magazine, an online fly fishing magazine with articles from your favorite fly fishing writers. The magazine is filled with tips, trips, and tightline stories to get you jacked for your next adventure out on the water. Visit flyfishinginternational.com to learn more. That's flyfishinginternational.com.
Please leave a message after the tone, and I'll get back to you as soon as I can.
Hey, Yilma, sorry I missed you there. I was really excited to tell you something big. All month for the rest of November, we've got a really special deal going on with Chums. So actually, if you visit Chums and you use a special promo code SOFLY15, you can get a percentage off of your order. So if you don't have a pair of Chums and you don't know what Chums are those amazing sunglasses retainers that clip on to the back of your sunglasses. But of course, Yilma, you know what Chums are because you've got all kinds of amazing Chums, as do I, and they're an incredible product. So for everybody listening in on this message to Yilma, if you guys don't have a pair of Chums and you want to get a pair, use the special promo code for the rest of November. Again, that's SOFLY15, SOFLY15, and use that on the Chums website when you're buying your order, and you're going to get a discount. So get the heck over to Chums and get yourself something. It's not just on sunglasses retainer. It's in the shop. Whatever you want to get, you get 15% off. So what are you waiting for? Get over there. Chums.com, and get yourself a pair of Chums. All right, Yilma? Sorry I missed you, and I hope whatever you're doing is fabulous. I hope you're having a fabulous day. Chums is also doing a special initiative from November 23rd to the 30th called the Week of Giving. So 20% from all sales are going to go to conservation groups, including Coastal Conservation Association, the Wild Steelhead Coalition, and American Whitewater. Plus, there's going to be a 10% discount on all Chums items, all of them. So head to chums.com and take advantage of that promotion. Again, that's going to be between November 23rd and the 30th. Chums Week of Giving. Get the heck over there and get some sweet Chums products. Oh man, Rick is like the coolest dude.
Dude, he's the best. He was great. He was so soft-spoken, so articulate, man, and he's just so knowledgeable. I love listening to him, especially the steelhead part, because that's, I'm always going to be a novice in fly fishing, but especially for steelheading.
Well, unless you go out there and do, but you don't want to, right?
No, I don't want to fish for steelhead, man.
Because you're cold.
I'm just kidding.
You're all cold. You don't want to get cold. You like being warm and toasty.
Cold as ice.
But yeah, that was a great podcast. I really liked getting a chance to talk to Rick. I wanted to talk to him for a long time, and steelhead season is here. We're in the middle of steelhead season now in Ontario, and it just felt like the perfect time to chat with him. I'm just looking at his book again. I got to lend this to you. Joe gave me this book, and I read it a few times. It's an awesome book, man. Like they go. I mean, well, maybe you shouldn't read it because you don't want to steelhead. So I'll give it to.
No, I didn't. It doesn't mean. It doesn't. Oh my God.
I mean, it's literally like it's full of like technical information on how to fly fish for steelhead, Great Lakes steelhead, and then the rivers we fish and the tribs of the Great Lakes, all kinds of stuff. And it's a great book. And I mean, everybody check out, not just. I mean, if you can find this one, Fly Fish for Great Lakes steelhead: An Advanced Look at an Emerging Fishery by Rick and Jerry. It's awesome. But Rick's got a bunch of books, so check him out because he's a great writer. and obviously a passionate angler. I don't know, man. I'm excited to go steelheading. I don't care if you're not coming.
Okay.
But could you come? Could you come?
I'll come. I'll come, man. I'm always gonna come.
We'll eat some chili. I
always, yeah. But Mitch, I always give a little bit of,
What are you looking at over there? You watching YouTube or something?
No, sorry.
What are you doing?
A lot of Slack messages are coming in from my boss. Sorry about that, folks.
Slack? Oh, you're on Slack for work?
I'm on Slack for work. I have Slack. I've got.
Oh, is that what you were saying about Slack?
Yeah.
Why? Does it make noise or something? I didn't hear it.
Yeah. You have to mute it.
You texted me. Oh, what's this? Oh, just sent me a picture. He's got his new steelheading glasses. You see that?
Yeah, I saw
unicorn
that.
Sunglasses. Unicorn heart sunglasses.
You better wear it on the river. Yeah.
Yeah, it does look like Elton John. Something Elton John would wear, those like crazy sunglasses. No one can see this, so nobody knows what the heck we're talking about. But
no, we're still recording.
Anyway, how's it going, Yelma? What's going on with you?
Pretty good. Yeah, no.
Right on. That's crazy, man. I'm getting excited to go out fishing. Aldo's not here. Aldo couldn't join us today. He wasn't able to make it, but I'm sure we're gonna hit the water soon together. Three of us. We're gonna go out. We're gonna try. I think we're hitting the water with Mr. Ian Troop. I'm excited to go fishing with Ian Troop.
Oh yeah, Mr. Ian Troop. It's always a good time with him. With that master.
Magnificent master.
Magnificent.
It is
the MM.
October 12th here. Like I said, we were recording this one a little bit early. This is the Knob 15 shot. I'm really excited about. When this comes out, we'll be like in Steelhead, and I'm excited because it's still, kind of early here. Idis and I were out the other day just practicing casting and swinging for the first time this year, and it was like 23 degrees. It was so hot. I was like, this is
I'm sweating right now. I got to put my air conditioning on. Dude, I'm sweating. I
am boiling right now. I got my window open.
Yeah. Oh my God.
Look at me. I'm dying. Look at me. I'm so hot.
I can see your
I'm about to go in the living room and I'm going to go in the living room and just freak out and just roll around on the floor and find some ice. Just throw some ice on me.
Just go.
I'm boiling.
Let's just crack a bush.
Man.
Pop some tops in the bush.
Like, why is it literally like summer weather? It's mid-October.
I have no idea.
It's not good, man. That can't be a good thing.
No.
You know what I'm saying?
I know what you're saying.
What else is new with you? What's going on?
Nothing.
You're working?
I'm working.
Back at Victory?
Yeah, working back at Victory. Got some fact or fishy designs to pull out. My bum.
Factor Fishies going up on the Instagram. Gonna put those back up in the Instagram stories. Factor Fishies.
Yeah.
Check out at the SoFly crew on Instagram for those Factor Fishies coming up.
Put the Factor Fishies. Yeah, Victory's good, man. They're just oh
yeah. What?
Nothing.
You had nothing to say. That was it.
Nothing.
Riveting, my friend. Okay, well, everybody, thanks for listening. Yilma's dead tonight, and all those on here, so I'm just talking to myself. Love you. Good to see you. And God, look at that. What are you making a crazy face for?
God bless.
It's good to see you.
Good to see you too, man. Well, your video has been disabled due to internet quality issues. Your video is still recording, however.
I think it's your. It's your video. Like you've been really blurry this whole time. I don't know what's going on with your.
Oh, I need to reset my modem.
Anyway, it's not very interesting podcast conversation. I'll be talking about work and internet connectivity. So I'm gonna let everybody go here and spare them of this absolute driv. Thanks so much for listening. Again, Rick, thanks for coming on the show. It was an absolute blast getting to talk to you. You're a fly fishing legend in these parts, and yeah, hopefully we can connect on the water. That'd be awesome. And everybody at home, thanks so much for listening. That's it for me, Mitch. Yelma?
That is for me as well. Until next time.
All right. Take care. Goodbye. You can find all of our content at sofly.ca. Reach out via email by sending your questions or comments to info@sofly.ca. Find us on Instagram @the SoFly Crew. Thanks for listening.